Let's be honest about something right away. When people say a concert was electrifying, they usually mean it was fine and the lights were cool. But what happened at NG Stadium in Sydney on Saturday, February 28, 2026, was something that doesn't quite fit into the normal vocabulary people use to describe a night out watching someone perform songs. This was different. And the more you look at the details, really look at them, the more you start to wonder if concert is even the right word for what went down. Because this felt less like a scheduled event and more like something that was always going to happen, something that had been quietly building for years, moving toward this exact moment, this exact city, this exact night, with the kind of slow inevitability that you only recognize in hindsight. But here's the thing about inevitability. It has a way of hiding in plain sight, and nobody in Sydney was paying close enough attention until now. Shh, turn the volume up, but keep it low. This is Rap Deepest Secrets, the one place the labels can't control, exposing the codes, the cover-ups, the real cost of fame. Help us to monetization by subscribing. Now, back to the video. Bad Bunny, Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, 31, Puerto Rican rapper, singer, actor, and at this point basically a walking cultural institution, did not sneak into Australia quietly. He arrived on the back of one of the most talked about Super Bowl halftime performances in recent memory, a show watched by 135.4 million people worldwide that somehow managed to be both a musical celebration and a political statement simultaneously. He arrived fresh off his album Debí Tirar Más Fotos. Yes, the capitalization is intentional and very much part of the chaos, spending weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200, eventually winning Album of the Year at the 68th Grammy Awards, becoming the first Spanish-language album to ever do so. He arrived, in other words, at the absolute peak of his powers, and Australia, which had never once hosted a Bad Bunny live show until this moment, was about to find out what that actually meant in person. NG Stadium, Sydney, tens of thousands of people, stadium lights cutting through the night air like something out of a film nobody had the budget to make, but somehow made anyway. The sense of occasion was immediate. But here's where it starts to get strange. There's a phrase people use, the room shifted. It's the kind of thing said about moments that can't quite be explained rationally, when the atmosphere in a space changes in a way that you can feel physically before you can articulate it mentally. NG Stadium shifted before Bad Bunny even stepped on stage, and that should have been the first warning sign. See, concerts are built around anticipation. You know something is coming. The lights go down, the crowd reacts, the artist appears, you scream, the set begins. It's a formula. It works. Everyone understands their role in it. But Bad Bunny's Australian debut didn't follow the formula. It moved with what witnesses described as calm authority, which sounds like a compliment, and it is, but it's also slightly unsettling when you think about it, because calm authority at that scale in a stadium of that size, in a country where he had never once performed before, implies something that goes beyond preparation. It implies that he already knew exactly how this was going to go, and if he already knew, how? Consider the facts. Bad Bunny is the first Latin artist to place 100 songs on the Billboard 100. Not a handful, not a few dozen, 100 songs. He broke records with his home island residency that had his home island responding to him like a national holiday that happened to have a set list. His world tour, the Debí Tirar Más Fotos World Tour, has been operating at a scale that most artists don't achieve once in a career, let alone during a single album cycle. And then he chose Australia for his debut, for his first time ever setting foot on Australian soil as a performer. Not a small venue, not a warm-up show. NG Stadium, one of the largest concert venues in the country, sold out. The casual observer would call this confidence. And sure, fine, call it that. But there is another interpretation, one that becomes harder to ignore the longer you sit with it. What if Bad Bunny didn't choose Australia because he was confident he could fill the stadium? What if he chose Australia because he already knew what was going to happen there? What if this whole night, every visual element, every moment of cinematic precision, every wave of thousands of voices collapsing distance and geography into something immediate and shared, was not a performance at all, but a confirmation? A confirmation of something that had already been decided. If you are watching this on the channel right now and you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment, right here. Because what comes next is exactly the kind of thing we dig into every week. The stories behind the spectacle, the details that the headlines skip over, the cultural moments that look like entertainment on the surface, but are actually something much larger underneath. Subscribe, hit the bell, come back every week. The algorithm is not going to serve you this content if you don't tell it you want it. So, tell it. Now, the twist. Here is what the night looked like on the surface. Bad Bunny performed. The crowd responded. Songs from Debí Tirar Más Fotos were played alongside older material. The production was cinematic. The scale was enormous. Everyone went home happy. Here is what was actually happening underneath all of that. Bad Bunny stood on a stage in Sydney, Australia, geographically about as far from San Juan, Puerto Rico as it is physically possible to be on this planet. And the distance disappeared. Not metaphorically, not in the way people say music brings us together because it sounds nice. Actually, tangibly, physically disappeared. Thousands of people who had no cultural proximity to Puerto Rico, who grew up on a different continent, who had only ever experienced this music through a phone speaker or streaming earbuds, were suddenly in the same room as the thing itself. And the thing itself did not perform for them like a visiting dignitary. It did not show up as a guest. It arrived, as one observer put it, as a force already embedded within the global bloodstream of modern music. That phrase, read it again, already embedded, past tense, before the show even started. The embedding had already happened. Sydney wasn't being introduced to Bad Bunny that night. Sydney was simply catching up to a reality that had been true for years. And that is the twist. That is the thing nobody says out loud when they talk about global superstars and their world tours and their record-breaking statistics. The twist is that Bad Bunny did not bring his culture to Australia on Saturday night. Australia had already absorbed it, silently, through streams and playlists and social media and the invisible movement of music across borders that happens constantly, continuously, without announcement or ceremony. By the time he stepped on that stage, the work was already done. The audience already knew the songs. They already felt the weight of what he represented. They were already, in some quiet way that defied geography, part of it. The concert was not an introduction, it was a reunion. Bad Bunny's trajectory over the past several years has not been the story of a Latin artist crossing over into mainstream success, a phrase that implies movement from one place to a more important place, which is both condescending and inaccurate. It has been the story of an artist who redefined where the center of popular music actually is. For decades, the assumption embedded in the global music industry was that mainstream meant English language, American or British in origin, and palatable to a specific kind of international audience. Bad Bunny did not challenge that assumption. He made it irrelevant. He did not ask permission from the traditional gatekeepers of mainstream success. He built an audience so large, so genuinely global, so completely indifferent to the old boundaries that the gatekeepers eventually had no choice but to follow. The Super Bowl performance was the most visible version of that, but Sydney, in its own way, said something just as significant. Because Sydney is not a music industry capital, it is not a city that validates careers in the way New York or London traditionally have. It is a city at the edge of the world that packed a stadium on a Saturday night for a Puerto Rican artist singing almost entirely in Spanish. And not a single person in that stadium thought there was anything unusual about that, because there wasn't. Not anymore. That is what the night at NG Stadium actually documented. Not just a great concert, not just a successful first Australian show, but the confirmation, live, loud, and undeniable, that something fundamental has changed about how music moves through the world, about whose stories get told at the largest scale, about who gets to stand in the center of global culture and call it home. Bad Bunny did not feel overdue in Sydney. He felt inevitable. And looking back at everything that led to that night, you realize the inevitability was never really a mystery. It was always written in the numbers, in the records broken, in the songs that crossed oceans before their creator did. The only surprise was that it took this long for the rest of the world to catch up. The moments that look simple from the outside but are actually massive when you know where to look. The artists reshaping culture in real time. The nights that feel like entertainment but function like history. If this is the kind of content you want more of, and based on the fact that you made it this far, it clearly is, subscribe to the channel. New videos dropping every week. We go deeper, we go wider, and we never just skim the surface. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and we'll see you in the next one. Because the story is always bigger than the headline, and we're just getting started.